cluster of grapes. And the grapes that were dangling from the branch was prophetic imagery. I want you to write that down. Numbers 13, Eshcol, Canaan. The grapes that were dangling from the branch that was promised and prophesied of in Zechariah 3. Oh, my God. The grapes that grew from the branch was a foreshadowing of a new dispensation. The branch that they cut out, that they cut down from Canaan, no wonder you move from Canaan, and the first miracle is at Cana. It was not coincidental that Jesus, out of all miracles, come on, you all, out of all the miracles he could have performed, out of all the miracles he subsequently did perform, he starts with water to wine first. Why? It is because, not coincidentally, he is moving providentially. He is moving prophetically. There is the prophetic fulfillment at the wedding. That's why the wedding turns into a winery, because he embodies, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He embodies the grapes. He is the branch from which the grapes grow, out of which the wine flows, because grapes, when they are crushed, no wonder when he says fill the water pots up with water, where's he going to get the where is he going to get the grapes from to make wine? People of God, he's the branch. He is the embodiment of the grapes. He brought within him the grapes. He is a supernaturally, prophetically, Jesus Christ is the grapes. He brings us into Acts 2 and 1. He is the bridge between, God Almighty, Malachi 4 and 6, Acts 2 and 1. He is, within him is the embodiment of the new wine. And the reason why they brought the grapes from Canaan is to show us that Canaan, the promised land in the Old Testament, foreshadows the kingdom in the new. And life in the kingdom, write this down, is life in the spirit. I cannot preach or teach kingdom if I don't preach or teach spirit. Yes, you hear it all the time. It's about walking in the kingdom. What does that mean? Are you just talking about this sphere of God's dominance, of his influence? Where does the sphere, where is it? When Jesus says it's not, you're going to say, here is the kingdom and there is the kingdom. He says, no, the kingdom is not there or here. He said it's within you. He's really speaking of himself. He's saying it's among you. What is he speaking of? He's saying, when you're looking at me, you're looking at the kingdom. And because why? Because the kingdom is life in the spirit. So that when you get to Acts 2, when I leave and I go away, I will send that same comforter. I will send that same spirit. I will send new wine. And that will be inside of you. Truthfully, we are looking at the kingdom existentially. But the truth of the matter is the kingdom is inside of us. We preach kingdom when we talk about entering into the kingdom. Truthfully, we should be teaching people how to walk in the spirit, because if you walk in the spirit, walk after the spirit, you are walking in the kingdom. This is so good. Now do you understand why he says fill the water pots up with water? Because the water is not standing water. The water is alive. Let me say that again. The water pots are now filled from the base to the brim, from the bottom to the top. It denotes baptism, inward immersion, which is why he instituted baptism in the first place. Why is John the Baptist baptizing? We just take for granted that he's just baptizing. Where does John get this from? John did not see it practiced under the law. How is it that John is baptizing? No wonder he says from the days of John the Baptist. That's why I tell you now, it was from Genesis to Malachi. That was the good wine. But it was from the days of John the Baptist until this very moment. As you all are hearing this word, that is the best wine. That's what the governor of the feast, he says, tasted it, and it was at the end, towards the end of the feast. He says, you did something different. You broke with tradition. How many understand Christ came to break with tradition? He came to uproot and upbraid tradition. Tradition is you put the good wine out and you, God Almighty, and you give the inferior wine afterwards when men have well drunk. But Christ came to break tradition. That's why he goes to the well. He didn't just go to the woman in St. John 4. He didn't just go to the woman at the well. He went to the well that was beside the woman. Because just as important as it was that he would converse with the woman at the well, was it as important? It was just as important for him to convert the well that was beside the woman. He didn't just come to the woman at the well, but he also came to the well that was beside the woman. Do you understand that the well was not just part of the background? It wasn't some prop. It wasn't incidental. It wasn't coincidental. He went to change the narrative of the well, because the well had the undergrounds that led back to Genesis chapter 34 with Shechem defiling Dinah. We never knew that. We were never taught that. My entire life I heard the woman at the well, but I never heard the well that was beside the woman. Because we just think that Jesus just happens to go there, and it just happens to be at the well. He met the woman there. No, do you understand? He purposely, providentially went directly to the woman at the time he knew she'd be there. Why? Because just as important as it was for him, amen, to converse with the woman at the well, it was just as important for him to convert the narrative of the well that was beside the woman. She was going up in her tradition to a place, seeing it as hallowed, seeing it as sacred, when she had no idea that deep beneath the surface, there were the undergrounds of forced intimacy. And forced intimacy with Shechem, this predator, this monster, taking intimacy from this young girl named Dinah, Jacob's daughter. The spoiled, rotten man who got everything from his father Hamor, and whatever he didn't get, he took. He was a predator. He was a monster. He was opportunistic. He was narcissistic, and he took intimacy. Took it from Dinah, defiled Dinah. Christ says, I'm going to change that narrative. Because as long as you're worshiping by a well that symbolizes forced intimacy, that is going to represent what worship is. And as long as we are living under a dispensation which we are commanded to love God, it seems to denote the same thing: forced intimacy. Forced intimacy. Love the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Commanded to love him. No, Jesus goes to the well and said, no, we're no longer in this mountain, no longer on these grounds, no longer by this well. I'm going to dig another well. I'm going to dig another well. Because, watch this, you're no longer going to do this because you're commanded to love me. You're not going to worship the Father because you're commanded to do so. It moves in under the Old Testament, under the old law, from Genesis to Malachi. It was the commandments. 10 commandments. Do you understand? From the days of John the Baptist until now, putting the Spirit inside of you, it moves from 10 commandments to 10 commitments.